Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a mountain of sources, the essential facts, the compelling context, and the surprising details, and deliver you the comprehensive, nuanced insight you need to be truly informed.
Today, we are immersing ourselves in the life and really the world-changing legacy of an individual whose brilliance on the field was matched only by the complexity of his life off it. The Australian cricket icon, Shane Warne.
Our mission today is pretty extensive. We're trying to synthesize the vast scope of Warren's journey.
It's a huge task.
It is. We need to explore his early, kind of unexpected athletic path, the specific mechanics of the skill that earned him the nickname the King of Spin, and then all the challenges and controversies that really shaped his public story.
Right. The goal is a thorough, impartial understanding of a figure who completely redefined his sport.
Shane Keith Warne, or Warnie, as most people knew him, born in 1969. He was, I think it's fair to say, a once-in-a-generation talent.
Well, absolutely. When you analyze his career, you're looking at a figure who achieved true institutional recognition. He was famously selected as one of the 5 Wisden cricketers of the century.
Which is just, that's the absolute pantheon.
It is. It places him among the all-time greats.
And when that shocking news broke in March 2022 that he had died suddenly at only 52, it was a moment of profound sadness that just resonated globally.
It really did. The reaction showed he was so much more than just a sportsman. He was a cultural force.
Yeah.
To truly appreciate his legacy, you have to dissect the man, the revolutionary bowler, and just the sheer force of personality he became. We need to understand how a young athlete from suburban Melbourne channeled his competitive drive to stand alone as the magician of the modern game.
Okay, so let's unpack his early life. He was born in Upper Ferntree Gully, Victoria, and he got a sports scholarship to attend Mentone Grammar. But what's really fascinating here is that his initial athletic focus was, well, it was a long way from a cricket pitch.
That's a crucial starting point. Before he was dominating the world with a cricket ball, Warne was actually dedicated to Australian rules football.
Right. Footy.
Exactly. He played for the St. Kilda Football Club's under-19s team. And the following year, 1988, he showed some genuine promise. He even kicked 7 goals in a single under-19s game before getting promoted to the reserves.
7 goals is a big deal in AFL. That shows he had real scoring ability, tactical awareness.
He did. And you have to wonder, did that background, that pure aggression and competitiveness from footy, maybe influence the mental game he brought to cricket?
It seems like a pretty compelling connection.
I think so. Australian rules football demands immense aggression, spatial awareness, and this constant direct confrontation. When Warne arrived in cricket, his leg spin was defined not just by how much the ball turned, but by the psychological pressure he put on the batsman.
He was always in their face.
Always challenging them, analyzing their feet, looking for any weakness. That aggressive, highly competitive mindset honed on the footy field certainly translated into the fierce mental tenacity he showed on the pitch.
So what forced the pivot then? Why did he leave what could have been a promising AFL career for cricket?
He was delisted by St. Kilda in 1988. And that rejection essentially was the catalyst. He was forced to focus entirely on cricket. He spent a bit of time in England playing club cricket, showed some raw talent. But the path still wasn't easy.
No, the sources suggest he really struggled even when he joined the Australian Cricket Academy in 1990.
That's correct. He joined the academy in Adelaide, but he struggled severely with discipline and, external expectations. It led to him leaving after some disagreements with management.
So when did the change happen?
It wasn't until 1992, when he was recalled, that the real transformation occurred. And that was under the mentorship of the former Australian Test spinner Terry Jenner.
Jenner's role is always highlighted, isn't it? But it does raise a question. If Jenner provided the discipline, why did Warne continue to struggle so intensely with discipline outside of the team structure for pretty much the rest of his career?
That's a great point, and it gets to the nature of that mentorship. Jenner is widely credited with harnessing Warne's raw talent and professionalizing his approach to bowling.
The technical side.
Exactly. The training, the preparation, the tactical thinking needed to master leg spin. He didn't necessarily instill personal discipline off the field. Warne learned to apply this intense professional rigor to his art. But his free-spirited nature and his struggle with authority remained a constant feature of his life outside the boundary rope.
The timing of his arrival wasn't just opportune. It was, and I don't think this is an overstatement, revolutionary. We have to stress the context here. Warne didn't just play leg spin. He basically rescued it from extinction.
Precisely. For the 2 decades before Warne's debut, the cricketing world was utterly dominated by fast bowling.
Yeah, you had Lillian Thompson for Australia.
And most notably, the formidable West Indies attack of the 1980s. They would often field 4 aggressive fast bowlers, just overwhelming opponents with sheer speed and short-pitched bowling.
And leg spin, in contrast, was just seen as a dying art. It was too risky, gave away too many runs.
Lacked the hostility of pace, exactly. Warne's arrival fundamentally challenged that entire tactical paradigm. His dominance provided cricket audiences and rival teams with a completely alternative and, frankly, mesmerizing skill set.
He proved that deception and spin could be just as deadly as raw speed.
He did. He forced captains and selectors globally to completely rethink the balance of their bowling attacks. You went from 4 pacemen to suddenly needing a genuine high-impact spinner. He shifted cricket's tactical architecture almost overnight.
But despite the revolutionary impact he eventually had, his start in international cricket was, statistically speaking, it was a disaster.
It really was. His Test debut was January 1992 against India at the Sydney Cricket Ground.
And the figures.
It was a brutal entry. Across 45 overs in that match, he managed to take only 1 wicket for 150 runs.
1 for 150.
That statistic doesn't just show a poor performance, it shows a profound lack of confidence. The selectors were skeptical. He was dropped for the next test.
And that rough patch continued, didn't it? On the tour of Sri Lanka, he went for over 100 without a wicket in the first innings.
He did, Zuver 107. That's a massive psychological hurdle for a young bowler to clear. But that period, that tour of Sri Lanka in August 1992, that became his crucible.
This is where it turned.
This is it. In the second innings of that match, with Australia looking like they were going to lose, Warne suddenly found his rhythm. He took the last 3 wickets without conceding a single run.
Wow.
He completely turned the match on its head, and Australia snatched this remarkable 16-run victory.
What was the immediate perception of that? Was it seen as a fluke?
I think the reaction was mostly shock. The Sri Lankan captain at the time, Arjuna Ranatunga, captured it perfectly. He said something like, "A bowler with a test average of more than 300 came and snatched the victory from our hands."
That's incredible.
That brief, match-winning spell, it was a signal. It showed this was a bowler capable of producing these impossible moments. And that became a recurring theme throughout his whole career.
The definitive turning point, though, the moment that launched him from a promising prospect to a global icon, came less than a year later. The 1993 Ashes Tour in England.
The ball of the century.
The ball of the century. It's a delivery that has its own mythology.
And the drama surrounding it is just impossible to overstate. It was his very first ball of the entire series.
His first ball in an Ashes series.
Ever. Bowled to the experienced England batsman Mike Gatting at Old Trafford. And Gatting was a highly respected player, known for being a good player of spin, which only amplified the impact of what happened next.
So let's dedicate some time to the detailed mechanics of this, because it's often described as pure magic, but there's some incredibly complex technique involved.
The technique was flawless. Warne generated immense amounts of topspin. He did it through a high arm rotation and a fierce rip of the ball with his fingers as it left his hand.
And that creates 2 key effects, right?
Right. Drift and dip. The drift made the ball hang in the air, sort of moving deceptively away from the right-handed batsman, Gatting. It made him think he was pitching wider than it was.
So it draws him into the shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then the topspin makes the ball dip suddenly, causing Gatting to commit to a forward stride where he thought the ball would land.
And crucially, where did the ball actually pitch?
It pitched dramatically outside Gatting's leg stump. Far enough outside that normally a batsman would just leave it or pat it away.
Sure.
But that rip he put on it generated such a phenomenal amount of side spin that the ball turned almost 90 degrees. It crossed the entire width of Gatting's body and just clipped the top of the off bail.
Gatting just stood there, didn't he? Utterly bemused.
He did. He was just defeated. It was a perfect storm. The context, first ball of the Ashes, the victim, Gatting, and the flawless execution of a near-impossible physical feat.
It was more than a wicket. It was a statement.
It was a declaration that the game had changed. And he went on to dominate that series, claiming 34 wickets, leading all bowlers, and setting the tone for Australia's Ashes dominance for the next decade and a half.
And that dominance immediately translated into statistical records.
Absolutely. 1993 was a landmark year for him. He took 72 Test wickets in that calendar year, which set a new world record for the most wickets taken by a spinner in a single year.
He brought that peak form back home for the 1994-95 Ashes. It's hard to follow up the ball of the century, but he managed another incredible milestone on home turf.
That was the second test, the famous Boxing Day test at the Melbourne Cricket Ground,
The MCG.
his spiritual home. And during that match, Warne achieved his first and only test hat-trick. He dismissed 3 tail-enders in successive balls: Phil DeFreitas, Darren Gough, and finally Devin Malcolm. The roar from the home crowd. It was something special.
And even before that dramatic hat trick, he'd already posted his career best figures in that series.
Yes, in the first test of that same series in Brisbane, he achieved his career best test figures, an incredible 8 wickets for 71 runs in the second innings.
So this early period was just defined by this relentless ability to produce these match-defining, explosive spells of bowling.
It was. But his competitive fire extended beyond bowling, too. We sometimes forget his crucial contribution with the bat in the third test that summer, surviving the final overs with Tim May to secure a draw and win the series.
It showed that will to win. He wasn't just a bowler, he was a fighter.
Exactly. This combination of statistical dominance and competitive drama led to him being named a Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1994. It was immediate recognition of his greatness.
As Warne entered the mid to late 90s, he became this indispensable pillar of the Australian team. While Test cricket was his main domain, his involvement in the 1999 Cricket World Cup was probably the highest point of his one-day international career.
His contribution to that World Cup winning squad was just staggering. He finished as the joint top wicket taker of the whole tournament with 20 wickets.
But what's really remarkable is his performance in the knockout games.
That's the key. He earned man-of-the-match honors in both the dramatic tied semifinal against South Africa, where he took 4 for 29, and then again in the final against Pakistan, where he claimed 4 for 33.
That's incredible clutch performance in the semi and the final.
It really speaks volumes about his ability to deliver under extreme pressure. And his genius wasn't just with the ball, it extended to his tactical intelligence.
Right. There's the famous story from the match against South Africa about his advice to the team.
Yes, about Herschel Gibbs. Warne told his teammates that Gibbs, who was a key South African fielder, had this tendency to throw the ball up in celebration prematurely before he'd fully controlled the catch.
A tiny detail, but a crucial one.
And later in that match, Gibbs took a catch but did precisely that. He dropped Steve Waugh when Waugh was on 56.
And Waugh went on to win the game.
He went on to score 120 not out. That anecdote just perfectly illustrates Warne's analytical mind and his ability to weaponize these small psychological weaknesses.
It's necessary now, though, to turn to the off-field landscape, because this was where his genius was complicated by his human fallibility.
This is a fundamental part of this story.
It is. The sources detail several complex incidents. The earliest one involved gambling figures.
This is the John the Bookmaker incident. It didn't fully come to light until 1998, but it happened back in 1994 during a tour of Sri Lanka. Warne and Mark Waugh were fined by the Australian Cricket Board, the ACB, for accepting money from an Indian bookmaker.
And what was the money for?
They accepted it in exchange for pitch and weather information, which they provided before a game. Now, the ACB stated they were satisfied this was not match fixing.
But it's still a huge breach of ethics.
A grave breach. Accepting money from a known bookmaker raised serious questions about the integrity of the players and the sport.
And that was quickly followed by an even more serious allegation regarding outright match fixing.
Yes. On that same tour in 1994, it was alleged that the Pakistani captain, Salim Malik, approached both Warne and another player, Tim May.
What was the offer?
Malik allegedly offered them a substantial bribe, US $200,000 each, to perform poorly and avoid taking wickets.
And they didn't accept it.
Crucially, no, they did not accept the bribe. But the incident just highlighted the intense and often dangerous environment surrounding international cricket at that time.
These events undoubtedly contributed to how management viewed his character, which eventually impacted his official standing within the team. He was made vice captain in 1999, but that didn't last long.
No, he was removed from the vice captaincy in August 2000. This followed reports that he had sent lewd text messages to an English nurse while he was married.
And the decision to remove him was made by the board, but there was some internal conflict there.
There was. The board's decision went directly against the wishes of the selectors, including the captain at the time, Steve Waugh.
So the people who relied on his bowling talent the most, the captain and selectors, still wanted him in a leadership role. But the institution, the ACB, deemed his public behavior too damaging.
That perfectly summarizes the tension of his career. His phenomenal skill was undeniable and irreplaceable, but his off-field life created constant managerial headaches. The ACB chose to prioritize the team's public reputation,
And he was replaced by Adam Gilchrist.
who was known for his exemplary behavior, a very different character.
That brings us to the biggest controversy of his career, which was his exclusion from the 2003 World Cup.
This was seismic. On the very eve of the tournament in Africa, Warne was sent home after testing positive for meteoric, which is a banned diuretic.
And his defense was very public.
It was. He stated he had taken what he called a fluid tablet, which his mother had given him to improve his appearance for the media.
Regardless of the intent, what was the outcome from the board?
The ACB found him guilty of breaching their drug code and imposed a 1-year ban from all organized cricket.
Which was hugely controversial.
It was. And to add to it, the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, criticized the ACB for allowing him to play in some charity matches during his suspension. Warne, in turn, heavily criticized WADA for what he saw as unnecessary interference.
A forced year out of the game at the absolute peak of his powers must have been devastating.
You'd think so. But retrospectively, Warne argued that the year of forced absence might have ironically extended his test career,
How so?
because it gave his body a much-needed break from the brutal international schedule. It allowed him to return refreshed and clearly highly motivated.
And that potential benefit of the ban certainly seems to have materialized. He returned to cricket in February 2004, and what followed was just a record-breaking rampage.
The return was electric. In March 2004, playing against Sri Lanka, he became only the second cricketer ever to take 500 test wickets. He just seemed sharper, more focused, and mentally energized.
This era is really defined by that intense rivalry with Sri Lanka's Mutia Muralitharan, wasn't it? They were locked in this race to be the highest wicket-taker in Test history.
It was a defining rivalry for the sport. It became this gripping narrative for years. On October 15, 2004, Warne dismissed Irfan Pathan during a series against India, which gave him 533 career test wickets.
And that broke the record.
It officially broke the world record, which had been briefly held by Muralitharan, who was injured at the time.
So Warne took the record, but the competition just kept going. They kept leapfrogging each other.
Correct. And while Muralitharan would eventually reclaim the numerical record in the end, Warne continued to set the big milestones first. In August 2005, during the Ashes, he became the first bowler in history to take 600 test wickets.
He was just venturing into completely uncharted territory.
He was. And 2005 was arguably his most statistically dominant year ever. He took 96 wickets in that calendar year, breaking his own record, and the ICC named him in the World Test Taker.
While his bowling defines his legacy, we shouldn't overlook his contribution as a lower-order batter. He was a genuine threat, even though he never got that elusive Test century.
That near-century moment is just iconic for its absurdity. Against New Zealand, he was dismissed for 99, caught at mid-wicket.
But there was a catch, wasn't there?
There was. Replays later confirmed that the delivery he was caught off was actually a no ball, meaning the runs should have stood. He would have had his 100.
So he holds a rather unusual record.
He holds the record for the most test runs without ever scoring a century. Over 3,000 test runs in total, which is a commendable achievement for a specialist bowler. He was always entertaining with the bat.
And beyond his batting, he was a critical figure in the field.
An outstanding slip fielder, which requires incredible concentration and reflexes. He took 125 catches in his test career, putting him 19th on the all-time list. His fielding was vital.
The true measure of his peak, though, has to be the 2005 Ashes series. Many consider it one of the greatest Test series ever played. And despite Australia losing, Warne was individually dominant.
He was the difference maker for Australia that year. He took an astonishing 40 wickets across the series, and he also scored almost 250 valuable runs. He shared Player of the Series honors with England's Andrew Funtoff.
He practically carried the Australian attack on his own.
He did, with ferocious intensity and this unparalleled will to win.
Were there any specific deliveries from that series that showcased his mastery as clearly as the ball of the century?
The sources highlight one in particular from the second test at Edgbaston. He bowled Andrew Strauss, a left-hander, with a delivery described as one of his sharpest spinning deliveries ever.
How much did it turn?
The ball deviated an incredible 60 centimeters. That's 2 feet off the pitch. It pitched on the offside and turned sharply to hit the middle and leg stumps behind Strauss's legs. The batsman was just completely bamboozled. It was a staggering display.
But even amidst that individual brilliance, the series ended in heartbreak for Australia, punctuated by an instance of his own human fallibility on the field.
That's the irony of the 2005 series. In the final test, Warne had been magnificent, taking 12 wickets in the match. But during England's critical second innings, he dropped a straightforward slips chance off Kevin Peterson.
How costly was that drop?
Peterson was only on 15 runs. Galvanized by the reprieve, he went on to score a match-saving 158. That innings allowed England to secure the draw they needed to win the Ashes for the first time in nearly 2 decades.
So even the greatest can make a simple error, and that one cost Australia the Ashes.
It did. A single moment of fallibility.
He ended his Test career shortly after, at the peak of the next Ashes series.
He went out in a blaze of glory. December 2006, in his penultimate Test at the MCG, his beloved home ground, he took his 700th Test wicket, the first player in history to do it.
And the wicket was Andrew Strauss again?
Strauss again. It was described as a classic Warne dismissal, and he got this massive standing ovation from a crowd of nearly 90,000 people.
And his final Test brought his career full circle.
It did. His final Test was at the Sydney Cricket Ground, exactly 15 years after his debut at the same venue. His last international wicket was Andrew Flintoff, stumped by Adam Gilchrist. He finished with 708 Test wickets.
Retirement from Test cricket just opened the door to the next phase, the world of T20 cricket, starting with the Indian Premier League.
The timing was perfect. Warne was signed as the captain of the Rajasthan Royals in the very first IPL season in 2008. He then led them as underdogs to victory in that first season.
Which was a remarkable testament to his leadership and tactical skill.
It really was. It proved he could inspire and guide a team. He continued with them for 4 seasons.
He later returned to Australia for the Big Bash League, but even at this stage of his career, we see those disciplinary issues pop up again.
Yes, he played for the Melbourne Stars. And in 2013, there was a confrontation on field with Marlon Samuels. Warne was fined and banned for 1 match.
What were the charges?
It was a comprehensive list, using obscene language, showing serious dissent at an umpire's decision, and making inappropriate physical contact.
So his competitive fire, for better or worse, it never really cooled down.
That's precisely right. He retired from all formats in July 2013, but that intensity, that relentless need to compete and challenge boundaries, was just a core part of his personality until the very end of his playing days.
His post-retirement career transitioned pretty smoothly into media and celebrity status, roles that his personality was really ideally suited for.
He became an immediate fixture as a television cricket commentator for major networks globally, a role he held until his passing. He also capitalized on his celebrity, hosting his own chat show, Warne.
Right, where he interviewed people like James Packer and Susan Boyle.
A very diverse group. He also entered into promotional work, sometimes controversially, like his work with Advanced Hair, which was investigated by advertising standards authorities. Even in retirement, his public image constantly generated scrutiny.
His personal life, particularly his high-profile romantic relationships, received intense, sustained public attention. He was married to Simone Callahan for 6 years.
From 1999 to 2005, and they had 3 children together. Their permanent separation happened in a way that just perfectly illustrated the pitfalls of his public life.
The text message incident.
He inadvertently sent her a text message that was intended for another woman, and that naturally ended the relationship in a very public and unfortunate way.
Following his separation, he became involved with English actress Elizabeth Hurley, which created a global media frenzy.
Their relationship was intensely followed by paparazzi everywhere. They were engaged in late 2011, but the engagement was called off by December 2013.
He reflected on that relationship later with a great deal of feeling.
He did. He offered a very revealing and poignant quote about it. He said, "I was more in love with Elizabeth than I had realized I could be. I missed the love we had. My years with Elizabeth were the happiest of my life."
We should also address his philanthropic efforts. He founded a major charity, though it ultimately faced significant financial difficulty.
In 2004, he launched the Shane Warne Foundation, which was dedicated to assisting seriously ill and underprivileged children. But while the foundation did distribute a significant sum of money, it struggled with administrative costs.
The sources show it closed in 2017 after running at a financial loss. For example, in 2014, it raised $465,000 but spent $550,000.
Which often suggests a lack of professional administrative oversight. Celebrities bring profile and fundraising power, but running a transparent, cost-effective charity requires dedicated financial management that perhaps wasn't consistently prioritized.
So his intent was genuine, but the execution was lacking.
Exactly. It adds another layer of complexity to his public legacy.
However, his humanitarian involvement after the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami showed an immediate positive impact.
This was a moment of great sportsmanship and humanity. He joined his great rival, Mattia Muralitharan in humanitarian efforts in Sri Lanka. The Shane Warne Foundation donated AU $20,000 specifically to help rebuild Galley International Stadium, turning a place of competition into a site of international solidarity.
The end of Shane Warne's life, coming so suddenly and unexpectedly, was a huge shock to the sporting world.
It was a heartbreaking moment that just stunned people across continents. On March 4, 2022, Warne died suddenly of a heart attack while on holiday in Thailand. An autopsy suggested the cause was atherosclerosis. He was only 52. And we really do extend genuine sympathy to his family for their devastating loss.
The timing of his death added another layer of just sorrow and disbelief.
He died on the very same day as another Australian cricket legend, the wicket-keeper Rod Marsh. Hours before his own passing, Warne had actually paid tribute to Marsh on social media. The dual loss just sent shockwaves through the Australian sporting community.
The public tributes that followed were, well, they were unprecedented for a cricketer. It reflected the fact that his fame had long transcended the sport.
The global mourning was immense. Emotional tributes poured in from former teammates like Ricky Ponting and Adam Gilchrist. But just as moving were the respects paid by his major international rivals, Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, Kevin Peterson. They all recognized his genius.
And his celebrity status drew tributes from far outside the cricketing world as well.
Absolutely. The arts and entertainment world reacted strongly. People like Elton John, Mick Jagger, Chris Martin, Russell Crowe. His former fiancée, Elizabeth Hurley, offered a poignant message, calling him her beloved Lionheart.
One of the most unique and, I think, telling demonstrations of public affection occurred at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the MCG.
The fans created an impromptu memorial at a statue outside the stadium, and the items they left there were just extraordinary. They decorated the site not just with flowers, but with objects reflecting his colorful, slightly hedonistic public persona.
Things like cans of beer, baked beans, meat pies.
And cigarettes. It was a profound visual statement.
What does that collection of items say about his legacy, do you think?
It says that the public loved the whole man, flaws and all. They recognized his human fallibility, the fact that he smoked and drank and enjoyed these simple pleasures, and they celebrated that authenticity alongside his sporting genius. It was a raw, deeply Australian display of respect.
This outpouring of grief culminated in a massive official ceremony.
A state memorial service was held at the MCG. It attracted around 55,000 people in person and was watched by over 1.5 million Australians on TV.
It was a major civic event.
It was. It cost $1.6 million and featured very emotional eulogies from his 3 children and his father. His father quoted Warne saying of himself, "I smoked, I drank, and I played a little cricket," which perfectly summed up his playful, self-deprecating view of his own life.
And the most enduring physical honor at the MCG was revealed during that service.
Yes. The Great Southern Stand, a massive section of the stadium where he achieved so many milestones, was officially renamed the Shane Warne Stand. His children unveiled the sign at the end of the service, set to the tune of Frank Sinatra's My Way.
A very fitting soundtrack for a man who famously lived life on his own terms.
It was. And his legacy continues to be recognized. He was posthumously appointed an Officer of the Order of Australia and elevated to legend status in the Sport Australia Hall of Fame.
And there's the trophy named after him and his great rival.
That's right. The Australia-Sri Lanka Test Series was permanently renamed the Warne Muralitharan Trophy, honoring both giants of modern spin bowling.
This deep dive has shown us a figure who was selected as one of the 5 Wisden cricketers of the century, the only specialist bowler still playing at the time, and who essentially saved an entire discipline of cricket from obscurity.
His story is one of true sporting mastery, woven together with a highly dramatic and public life. His accomplishments were enormous, but they were consistently linked with highly publicized human flaws, the scandals, the dropped catches, the leadership failures.
And that juxtaposition of genius and fallibility is what made him so magnetic.
It's what made him relatable, captivating, and utterly compelling to millions around the world.
We've examined his 708 Test wickets, his World Cup glory, and the high points of his dramatic life. We have seen how his unique skill redefined the art of leg spin.
But the true insight into his impact, I think, lies in the sheer audacity of his approach and the mind games he played. If you consider his own words, they encapsulate his legacy better than any statistic. He said, "Part of the art of bowling spin is to make the batsman think that something special is happening, even when it isn't."
What kind of enduring legacy does that leave when a sportsman's drama, his unprecedented skill, and his very human fallibility become intrinsically linked to the identity of the game he mastered?
That is the Complex, brilliant, and unforgettable legacy Shane Warne leaves behind for the world to continue analyzing.